Now, into the ticket office of Disneyland.
Oh boy, let's do this. Don't think the CIA is going to be trying to hack your second-gen iPod.
I didn't think so. There might have been a lot of illegal music on there. I wouldn't doubt it. But, I mean...
You were supposed to bring death to the flagships, not join them.
That's a pill with two screens and it's open and you gotta swallow it.
iTunes is a constant source of embarrassment.
Behind-the-scenes camera crap.
Here, tell us about courage, Phil. Tell us about courage.
I am Nadella.
I can't do it anymore without laughing. I was going to do the whole thing. Welcome, everyone, to the Calling All Platforms podcast. I am your host, and I am here with Landon.
Hello.
And Caleb. Woo! And we are here to talk all things tech. And Landon was Caleb, that was a poor impression of Ric Flair.
Oh, come on.
I mean, come on. You can do better than that. Let's hear it. Go for it. Oh, wait, you got a sleeping baby. Don't do that.
No, really.
You do bored. Don't
really,
do that.
No.
Otherwise,
It's actually-
I'll be in trouble.
Bedroom's directly above me as well.
So I'll give you the pass on that one. Woo, okay, let's get into this. Well, I heard, there might be something that was released, some hardware. I don't know. It's probably not that important. But Landon, I think you want to talk about this, even though you're technically our Apple guy, but not our Google guy. This is weird. But hey, we're gonna roll with this.
I'm definitely both, I'm pretty sure.
It is really weird, though, because you're about to talk about this, a device you have no plans to buy, at least as far as I'm aware.
Nope.
And yet Wes has pre-ordered it already.
And yet I know. I was just sitting there
And
thinking,
he's not the one. It's
maybe
just,
I should talk about this because I pre-ordered. But
it's all so topsy-turvy.
oh.
Well,
I'll tell you what, Landon, you take it this time.
I'll cover for you this time, Wes.
Thanks. You're the best.
All right, listener. Well, as Wes alluded to, Google had their event, the Pixel event, where they officially announced their devices, the Pixel 7, Pixel 7 Pro, the Pixel Watch. We got a few more details about the Pixel tablet, but nothing quite, I don't know, we'll get to that later. But I was telling Caleb before we started recording that I have a love-hate relationship with Google events. I mean, I love that they are generally relatively short and just, kind of to the point-ish. But the problem is that they are all over the place. Like, it is hard to take notes on these events because they talk about this, then they talk about this other thing, then they talked about that thing, then they go back to the first thing, then they talk about the third thing, and then they, oh, here's a new one. Oh, wait, no, we're not back to the second one. It's just cover one thing, then go to the next one, then go to the next. Come on, Google.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of get it-ish because, I mean, they're getting to the point where it's kind of like Apple, where they have all this stuff and it all goes together and it all works very well. But not even Apple does this. Like they talk about the iPhone, then they talk about the iPad, then they separate things out the way it's supposed to be done. But no, Google doesn't do that. So I'm just I don't know how I'm gonna cover all this, but I'm going to. My notes are all over the place. I tried to put them in some sort of order, but it's fun. Okay. So I want to start off by saying that all tech companies are idiots. Let's just put that out there because
Fact.
they love to make fun of each other for the same things. And then they go and contradict themselves in the same event. I mean, it happens at Apple, it happens at Google, it happens at Samsung. They all do it. And it's annoying and they just need to stop. So the thing I'm talking about this time, listener, is right near the beginning of the event. Google, this is the line that they said. They said, "We take it as a compliment when others in the industry follow our lead, like always on display that we put on the Pixel 2, night sight and astrophotography that came out on the Pixel 3, and car crash detection that we came out with 3 years ago. So obviously they're taking shots at Apple because the new iPhone just now got always on display. They just now got car crash detection. They've had night photography for a couple years, not that much after the Pixel 3, honestly. So I don't know where they're going with that one.
It was like the year after, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But then later on in the announcement, they added cinematic mode to their cameras. I mean, they're calling it cinematic blur, so it's brand new. It's a new thing.
Yeah.
Because it's not cinematic
before.
mode, it's cinematic blur. So it's a new it's so stupid. Just get over yourselves, and when you add it to your phone, that's fine. You don't need to take shots at everyone else. Nobody cares. We're doing it for you. Anyways, moving on. I had to say that because it bugged me.
I think my favorite was Marquez Brownlee's tweet. Like from the event, Marquez Brownlee is like in the audience, and he tweets after he's all like a timestamp, and the comment about, oh, we're so we're flattered when other companies copy our features, and then another timestamp that's like less than 20 minutes later. Here's all of the things that Apple has had for a couple of years that we just introduced.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, I love that. From the audience firsthand. Yeah.
That was pretty freaking funny. I mean, there's a lot of people that are giving Google crap about this. It's not just not just us, not just Marquez Brownlee. It's like a lot of people out there. Like Google, you can't call them out for copying you and then copy them and say it's a new thing that hasn't been done before, because that's not true at all. Whatever.
Yep.
So they talked about the new Tensor chip, a decent amount, obviously. It's the new Tensor G2 is what they're calling it. Interestingly enough, they did not talk about how much different it is from the first gen, other than to say that it's 60% faster with machine learning and AI. They didn't talk about performance or any of that other stuff. They talked about machine learning, which, I mean, that is kind of their whole thing with especially their own chip. That's how they do a lot of stuff, is AI and machine learning and whatnot. So, okay. But I just thought it was interesting that they didn't talk about performance and the differences between the first gen and the second gen. Obviously, we will find that out because people are going to be using these phones and they will be able to tell us the differences. Just Google didn't. Granted, I don't know what's better, that or I guess what's worse, doing it this way or doing it Apple's way, where they don't give numbers, they just give random charts that don't tell us anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a lose-lose there, but
They're great charts. Love those.
Yeah, but most people do that anyway.
Yeah.
Other tech companies, I mean.
It's true. They did talk a lot about security with the new Titan M2 chip as well. They are saying that the Pixel 7 phones will be getting 5 years of security updates. So that's nice. They didn't mention anything about OS updates, but they're getting 5 years of security updates. I would imagine they're probably going to be doing 4 years of OS updates. I think that's what their new standard is that they started with the Pixel 6, but I don't remember for sure. But either way, 5 years of security updates, that's a good thing. And they also said that the Pixel 7 phones will be getting the Google One VPN for free. So, like, normally if you pay for Google One, you get a VPN that goes onto your phone. That goes with iPhone and Pixel phones, I believe. It might actually go with any phone if you have Google One. I can't remember for sure. But if you have these phones, you will be getting their Google One VPN for free to use. So that's kind of nice. Along with the new faster machine learning and AI stuff with the Tensor chip, they talked about different updates to voice assistants. So meaning like voice to text and stuff like that. They're saying they're going to be able, if you were to get a message inside of Google Messages that's an audio message, they can transcribe it for you, kind of like how visual voicemail works, but this is going to be inside of the Messages app. So, I mean, I don't know how many people send audio messages through that. I don't think I ever have. sent audio messages over a text messaging app. But if you do, this will transcribe it for you, and you can read it instead of listen to it if you want. Or if you're in a situation where you can't listen to it at the moment. I don't know, but that's there. Also, the recorder app that is on the phone is getting a lot better. So it's pretty decent as it is. I mean, Google's AI and voice to text stuff is really good. But now they're adding this feature where it's going to have speaker labels coming later this year. So basically, it will separate out if you're having a conversation with someone, say you're interviewing someone and what you have is your phone recording it, it will separate out in text the two different people that are talking, or however many people it is. And actually, someone that was at the event, I think this was actually MKBHD, he was saying that he was talking to one of the Google employees about this feature, and they actually pulled one of a Pixel 7 out of their phone, out of their pocket, and it had been recording their conversation and showed him this feature, and it was dead on. Like, it had one person their text and one person their text, like their conversation. It was all separated out, and like that's actually pretty cool.
Wow,
they can do that.
Yeah, that is cool.
And it was like 100% accurate too. So that's a feature that is coming later this year. It's not there at the moment, but it will be there on the Pixel 7s. I haven't heard if it's coming to older phones. I don't know. It may be able to come to the Pixel 6 because that has a Tensor chip as well, but it may not, just because they may need the updated Tensor G2 in order to do this. I don't know. But that is a cool feature. They also added some new features to Pixel Call Assist. This is like how it's got the call screening built in and stuff like that. They're adding what they're calling clear calling later this year. Basically makes it so it just sounds better to both people. So your sound is going to be better for whoever's listening. But also, interestingly enough, they're going to make it so the person that's calling you sounds better. If they're in a rough environment, like if it's loud or windy or whatnot, or just their connection's not super great, and it's, has some weird sounds going through, it's going to make them sound better to you. So you'll be able to understand the conversation a little better that way, which is pretty impressive. Obviously, we're going to have to wait to see how it actually works on the phone, how it sounds, but kind of cool that they're going to be trying to do that.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, you will have to.
Guess go through a tunnel for me and call me.
You're just going to have to, I'm going to send you these notes. You're going to have to test out all the things.
Okay, I can do that. I mean, I guess technically I am the Google person now, so
that sure seems like it.
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
give me two jobs, I guess.
You got the Pixel phone, you got the Pixel Buds. Although you need to order the new Pixel Buds Pro that just came out, so you can really.
Hey, so you figured out my plan. If you actually pre-order, you get $200 in Google Store credits when they send it. So I'm going to just use that $200 and get the Pixel Buds Pro.
Hey, there you go. Look at that. You really are the Google guy. Just like I am the Apple guy, apparently.
I'm pulling a Landon, but with Pixel.
Guys, I'm not switching to Microsoft stuff exclusively. It's just
I need to send you my old. I'll send you this Windows phone if you want. I've got a few.
No.
I don't think security updates are even there, so I wouldn't send it to you. That'd be.
It probably would be.
I think even Microsoft would be like, "Hey, we're not putting security on this, right?"
I mean, you probably wouldn't be able to download, use any apps on it, because there were hardly any apps to begin with when it was a thing. But now, I mean, come on, probably nothing.
I have no idea.
Anyways, the next thing that they talked a lot about was the camera on these phones. One thing that they added that is coming to both of these phones is what they called guided frame. Now, what this does is it gives audio cues to take better selfies for people that are visually impaired, basically. So the video they showed was different, like people that are either legally blind or like just couldn't see very well in different cases. They were trying to take pictures, and it actually would talk to them and tell them, okay, put your hand up a little bit or down or to, different directions to actually frame you in the photo better, which
Wow.
is really cool. I mean, obviously, like, we're not going to be in the target audience for this, but I do know people that could use this, people that either, again, have are pretty, really blind, like hard time seeing in general, or are blind fully, that have phones. If they want to try and take a picture of themselves, then buy them, like, don't have to go get someone, hey, take a picture of me really quick. But they can do it themselves now, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
They talked about adding this new photo unblur feature. Now, from what I can tell, this is going to be a Pixel 7 exclusive, kind of like how the Magic Eraser feature in Google Photos was a Pixel 6 exclusive until a couple weeks later someone made it work on other phones. So this might eventually work on other phones, maybe not because Google does it, but other people do it. But the way this works is they can take any picture, not just ones taken on a Pixel 7, but any picture, whether it's taken on an iPhone, taken on a different Pixel, taken on a camera. If it's in Google Photos on your Pixel 7, you can use this feature. What it'll do is if you have a photo that is slightly blurry, say you're trying to take a picture of your pets or your kids and they're running around, it's kind of hard to take a sharp image of that scenario. Or maybe your hand was just shaking a little too much, it's a little blurry. They can take that photo and sharpen it up and make it look relatively normal for that. Like all the examples that they gave looked really good. Again, that's going to be the case. So we have to wait till people get these in hand and try it out for themselves. Reviews should be coming out later this week because, the phones go on sale in stores this week or out to people, getting shipped to people this week. So we should be getting reviews later this week. So we'll be able to see this feature by people that aren't working at Google. But it looked really cool. So hopefully it works just as well as they say it did. Because if it does, that's pretty awesome. And then, like I said, cinematic blur, also known as cinematic mode, it's coming to both phones. You already know what that is. It's basically exactly what Apple's is. So there you go. Both these phones have 10-bit HDR in video and a lot better video stabilization. And the example they were giving looked really good. The zoom, they focused a lot about this, and this is going to be on the Pixel 7 Pro is where this comes into play because it's got the 3 cameras. It's also very similar to what the iPhone Pro does, because the Pixel 7 Pro has that 50 megapixel camera, similar to iPhone's 48. So it can do a 2x zoom, a 5x zoom, and a 10x zoom. So the telephoto is a 5x telephoto lens. So you're getting that right there. And then the 2x is using the regular wide-angle lens, but then just cropping it down, similar to what Apple does on the iPhone, and giving you basically a smaller, I can't remember exactly how they worded it, but you know what I mean. Basically what Apple is doing, taking a larger photo, cropping it down, using the more pixels, and just making them bigger. I can't remember. You know what I mean.
Instead of using the collated, where they group pixels together to make larger pixels that do a better job of gathering more light, they just use the native resolution of the sensor.
Yes,
so
that's what it is.
It's still a full resolution image. It's not digitally zoomed or anything like that, but it doesn't have quite as good of low light performance or whatever.
Right. And then the 10x zoom is using the telephoto lens. They're not doing the same thing that they're doing with the wide angle where it's just cropping the image down. They're just using the crazy photo AI that they've had on all their phones the past 7 years and just making it zoom a lot better. And the photos that they showed off with this 10x zoom looked really good. Again, we're going to have to wait and see how it is in real life with real people. But it did look pretty decent at that 10x zoom. They did say that they can go up to 30x zoom on these phones, on the Pro phone specifically. but that's not going to be great. That's going to be one that you're zooming in so you can just see a little farther, not because you want to take a decent picture, because it's not going to be a decent picture. It's just there.
No.
Also, they added a legitimate macro mode to the camera also on the Pro phone. So another thing that they, didn't copy from Apple. People were able to use the Pixel 6 Pro last year and do a kind of macro mode, but it wasn't a built-in thing. They used the wide-angle lens and basically kind of cropped the image on their own. Doing it that way is what people did to have a makeshift macro mode. But this is an actual macro mode, the same way that Apple does it on the iPhones. But that's kind of handy. I mean, it's one of those that it's not a feature that you're going to use a lot. I don't use it a ton, but I do use it every now and then. And the photos I get from it are actually really cool. And I like it a lot. Okay. Now, let's go over some specs for these phones. Let's start with the Pixel 7. It has, both these phones, like I said, have the Tensor G2 chip. Pixel 7 has a 6.3-inch Full HD display at 90 hertz. It's got 8 gigs of RAM, 128 or 256 gigs of storage, a 4,355 milliamp hour battery. The front camera is a 10.8 megapixel, 92.8 degree field of view sensor. So it's actually a wider lens than what they've previously used. And both of these cameras, both the phones have this same front camera. And I actually like this a lot because on the Pixel 3, it had a wide angle lens on the front. And I absolutely loved that. It made it so if you were taking a like a group selfie or something, using that lens, you could wide it out and you don't have to have someone take your phone and take a picture. You can actually just hold your arm out still and get everyone in the frame. And they only had it on the Pixel 3 phones, and then since then they've gone to a more narrow field of view sensor. And I'm actually glad that they're bringing this wider angle back because, again, it was really handy when I had that phone. I was the designated, group picture taker because my phone could actually get everyone in the frame. And I was fine with that because it also just had, at the time, was taking better pictures than the other phones that people had anyways. The rear cameras on this phone, again, there's a 50 megapixel wide sensor, a 12 and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. So it's just got the two sensors on that. It's got 30 watt wired charging and up to 23 watt wireless charging, IP68 rated. And then the price on this is $599. So they actually kept the same prices as last year, which that's something they didn't copy from Apple, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't need to get Caleb going on that, but, I had to mention that Google did keep the same prices. The downside of that is they kept the same price for the Pixel 7 Pro, which is $899. $300 difference between these two phones. Again, I think there's a little more difference between these two phones to justify it, but we'll get to that in a minute. So the Pixel 7 comes in 3 different colors. It's lemongrass, snow, and obsidian. These names are fun. It's basically like a greenish yellow, it's a pretty light greenish yellow color on the lemongrass. Snow is white, obsidian is black. And then the 7 phones have an aluminum band around the side, and then the camera bar is an aluminum band that goes across that as well, that is connected to the frame, so it's all one big piece, which is kind of nice. Whereas last year on the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, the camera bar was a whole big sheet of glass. So I don't know, I didn't hear of anybody breaking that, but it had the potential to break a little easier because it's glass. But this one, except for where there's a camera cut out, but everything else on that bar is metal, so that's nice. And these are aluminum, and they are a flat, matte aluminum finish, which I actually like better than the shiny stainless on the Pro devices. And that's the same with Apple. I don't like the shiny stainless on the Pro phones. Like mine has that shiny stainless band around the outside. I don't love it. I wish it was more of that matte finish, but whatever. These tech companies think Pro people want shiny phones, and that's just not the case. All right, now going on to the Pixel 7 Pro. This one has a 6.7-inch Quad HD display with 120 hertz LTPO display. That basically gives it that variable refresh rate that we can... I don't know what it goes between on this one. They didn't give those specs, that at least not that I found, but it has that ability, so that's nice. It's got 12 gigs of RAM. You can get 128, 256, or 512 gigs of storage. It's got a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. The front camera, again, is that 10.8, 92.8 degree camera. On the back, it's got a 50 megapixel wide, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 48 megapixel telephoto lens. So, pretty nice cameras there. And like I said, the price is $899 on that one. And the colors that it comes in is hazel, snow, and obsidian. So the two, snow and obsidian, same colors. Hazel is more of a... it's a green, but it's a darker foresty type green, but it's like a faded... I don't know how to describe it. And then the metal on that is gold. Well, not actual gold, obviously, but, gold colored. And again, those have the stainless steel metal band on the outside and along the camera bar. And it is shiny, not matte, because that's fun. And some people pointed this out in their review, in their hands-on, that the Pro phones, that camera bar was already getting scratched, or at least having visible scratches, because it's that shiny stainless steel. Whereas the other ones have the matte aluminum. They're going to hide any of those little fine scratches that you're going to see on a shiny device. The matte finish is going to hide those a lot better. So again, I want the matte finish, not the shiny. Nobody wants the shiny finish. At least not anybody I know. That's for sure. I get the appeal, but anyways, moving on. I want matte. Anyways. But again, $900 price on that phone. I still don't love the $300 difference. There is a little bit more to justify kind of the difference between these two phones. There's more RAM on the Pro. It's got the better display. It's got the better cameras. It's got the bigger screen. I still don't fully understand the $900 price point. I do love the fact, like I said, that Google kept the same prices as last year, but they would have been more justifiable in raising the price of the 7 $100, because I think the 7 at $599 is a really good deal. And same with the 6 last year. That was a really good deal for that phone. And then the Pro at $900 is about right, I think. It's competitive. It's a little less than the other flagship phones that you're getting in the Pro sphere. It's less than the iPhone by $100. It's less than Samsung's, I think, also by $100. So, that's not a bad deal. So I think they could have justified raising the regular 7 $100, and I don't think people would have been as upset about it as people are with, the iPhone. But they didn't do that, and so that's a good thing, but it just makes it harder to justify that $300 price difference, in my opinion, for the Pro. Now, I have to ask, Wes, you said you pre-ordered the Pro. What was your reasoning behind getting the Pro over the regular 7 for that $300 difference? I'm curious.
Well,
is it just because you want the Pro?
I do miss having
I would do that.
I'm so pro. I do miss having the bigger screen. I'm going from a 6.0 to a 6.7 because I have the Pixel 5.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of getting the bigger screen. So basically either or was an upgrade. Yeah. But I do want to mess with the camera this time. I really want to start really messing with things. So, because before I didn't really mess with the camera, but now I'm like, oh, that'd be fun to have that telephoto camera, mess with it, just things like that. So that was kind of my mind there, and comparing this to say if I didn't go with Pixel and I wanted to look at others, I mean, it was a lot higher price to go to like a different, say, non-Pixel. So I was like, well, let's skip a generation and go to here. So
yeah, I mean, I hadn't really thought about that too much, other than when just comparing prices in general. But yeah, if you're right, if you're going for spec wise, if you're going to leave the Pixel phone to something else, you're going to be spending more money in most cases.
right.
Where, like I said, the Samsung is at $1,000. The regular iPhone what are they on? 14? The 14 Pro is $1,000. And if you want the bigger screen on the Pro Max, you're even spending $100 more than that. So,
Right.
yeah, I guess, like I said, this is definitely a better deal when it comes to spec for spec, basically, on that. But it's still, where they start the 7 at $600, it's just makes it interesting. Especially where they have the 6A at $450, I think. So, I mean, it's a $150 difference there, but it's, I don't know. It's interesting.
I feel like they have probably priced these phones separately from each other in order to do exactly what you're saying. Spec for spec, they wanted to price beat their competitors. And so they were all like, well, okay, so the Pro phone, we are going to shoot $100 less than everybody else's quote-unquote Pro phone, and it's $900. And then they looked at the entire industry and went, okay, so if we want to beat everyone else's kind of like entry-level flagship device, then that's the $600 one. That's going to give us about $100 worth of leeway on that one. It's almost as if they didn't, like, unlike Apple, it's almost as if they just priced their phones in relation to the devices they're competing with and not just in relation to themselves.
Yeah.
Which does kind of raise a question as to whether or not Apple is actually competing with anyone at this point in their own heads, because they very clearly priced their own phones in relationship to each other and nothing else.
Yeah.
Like, completely detached from reality, the pricing scheme of the iPhone right now.
Yeah.
And so
I don't think Apple's been competing with anybody else. I don't in their heads ever. I think Steve Jobs is ingrained that company into we compete with ourselves, and that's not a bad thing, especially because
in some ways.
In some ways it's not a bad thing, because I mean, when you think about it, there's nothing else running iOS, so they don't have to fully compete in that sense.
It's just, oh man, it does kind of suck sometimes. But I gotta say, from that perspective, I prefer Google's methodology a lot more, because I'm sure that Google looked at the price of the iPhone when they were going to price the Pixel 7, but they were also looking at the Samsungs and the Asus phones and the ROG, the Motorola's and the flipping Oppos and whatever out there. Like, they were looking at a lot of phones probably, and that's just how it feels to me. And that's why you end up with such a big gap between those two, is they did not care that what the phone's prices were in relationship to each other. It feels like they priced them against the industry at large, with the end goal of spec for spec, you get a slightly better deal with a Pixel.
Yeah, and I feel it's similar to what Microsoft did with the Xbox X and S. Like, for people that want to kind of get into, say, the Xbox ecosystem, they kind of go for the cheaper one. And I feel like that's kind of how I looked at it. I guess the Pixel 7, the non-Pro, is kind of more that if people were looking like, oh, well, this one's this, and I kind of like what, the hype over there, maybe I'll dive into it for only $600. So,
yeah. And then even then they have the 6A at $450, which is a phenomenal deal for that phone.
Great price. Great.
True. That as well. Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right, Caleb. They've done a good job at looking at the market and be like, hey, if we want to actually sell devices, and they said the Pixel 6 series of phones was their best-selling Pixel to date, which doesn't surprise me by any means. It's easily, up to that point, was their best phone. By not just because it's updated specs, just because of what it featured. But I think, like, while you were talking, I was thinking about this. The other difference between Apple and Samsung with Google is Google has two phones. They've got a regular 7 and a Pro, whereas Samsung has, I think, I think they're similar to Apple, where Apple has 2 of their quote-unquote regular phones and then 2 Pro phones. And Samsung, I think, has at least 3 models of their latest, the S22 and whatnot. I can't.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Because there was that whole deal with their Ultra is basically just a Note.
Right.
And that's like, it's a whole different thing, even though it's just technically a Galaxy S22 Ultra or whatever. And then they had their Plus and then their standard one. And
I think you're right.
I think it's those 3. And the Plus and the standard one are very similar to each other. It's just, size difference is the main differentiation there. And then the Ultra is like a totally different phone.
Yeah, they have the S22, the S22 Plus, and the S22 Ultra. So, yeah, they've got the 3 different models right there. And I think if Google were to have even just 3 different models, like if they had a 7 Plus, and the 7 Pro, where they had like the 7 Plus was like the 6.7-inch display, but similar specs to the 7, they could price that right in between these two very comfortably, and that would actually make things make more sense. But where it's just the 2 phones and a $300 gap, it just seems more out of place, even though, like, when we've talked about this, like, it actually now kind of makes some sense why they did it this way.
Yeah, there's just like a missing device in their portfolio right there.
Yeah.
Which honestly is probably fine. I feel like with the stated goal, as we're hypothesizing that Google is just trying to undercut everybody else's price by about $100, they're probably banking on the idea that anybody who wants the Pixel phone but wants the bigger screen is going to be willing, instead of paying, $750 or $800 for a quote unquote Pixel 7 Plus, they're willing to jump an extra $100 up and just buy the Pro at that point. And Wes was apparently. So, like, I think that's kind of what they're banking on. And given that they're so price competitive, it feels like that's a pretty safe bet. See, it makes sense in that context. Unlike Apple, who kind of did it the stupid way and increased the entire price of their entire lineup of phones and then slotted the bigger phone into the middle of that. See, if Apple had done the same thing and just kind of left their phone prices the same, then the Plus would probably be getting a lot more traction. So Apple did not make the right bet on how people feel about screen sizes. I think Google has. I think this is probably the smarter play.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, also, Google, I don't think really can afford to have a third phone, like 7 series phone.
Yeah,
it's one thing to have your cheap, like your A series, because that's something completely different. Whereas your flagship series, they're not selling enough units to justify a third option. Whereas obviously Apple can have the 4 options and be fine. They're making boatloads of money. Samsung is the same way. They have tons of money and they make money, way more money off their cheaper phones anyways. So they're fine. Google is still relatively new. I mean, yes, this is the 7th generation of the phone, but they're still relatively new. They're not anywhere near that top, like even the top 2. They're definitely in that 3rd or lower market space. So they're fine with this. And yeah, now that we've talked over this and stuff, I'm actually relatively fine with these prices. And like I said, this year's, like, I think that in the 6 and 6 Pro, the price difference was not, or the spec difference was not as big as it is here. It's still not huge here, but it's better. Like there's definitely a more of a difference between these two than there was last year. So that price difference is a little more justifiable in that regard. So that's the phones. Overall, I like what I'm seeing. I do like these phones. I am like Wes. If I were to buy one of these phones, it would be the Pro because I want the bigger screen. I went to the iPhone 12 initially when I switched over, And the entire time I had it, I kept thinking, man, I really wish I would have got the bigger screen. But at the time, I couldn't afford it. And then when AT&T offered to give me $1,000 for my iPhone 12, which is more than I paid for it, I'm like, sure, take it.
Yeah.
I'll take a Pro. And pay $100 and get a Pro Max gladly. So,
Pro
but,
Max.
yeah, I do like that. I like the bigger screen. And the cameras are definitely going to be nice to have. The 3 options is always beneficial. So, all right. Now, the next thing they talked about was the Pixel Watch.
Yes.
And this is actually, I'm more interested in this than I thought I was going to be, based on all the rumors that we'd heard about it and obviously the pictures that they showed of it. The look of it is growing on me. I don't think I would order this watch still, but that's just me, just based on how it looks, and I think I don't know. There's reasons. But it comes in 3 different colors. There's black, silver, and gold. The band system is a proprietary band system, which we kind of already knew about based on just looking at the pictures that we saw. But it actually, people are saying this is one of the easier bands to take on and off that they've ever seen on a smartwatch, even more than Apple's, which Apple's is pretty easy. But this one, it's similar to Apple, where it's got a little button that you push on the side of the band, on the body of the watch. There's a little button, then you just twist the band ever so slightly, and then it just pops out. And then to put the band on, you put it in there and twist it back on. And it looked really easy in the videos that I saw of this. So that's kind of cool. The downside to it being proprietary is you can't just go and buy a bunch of bands. And for some stupid reason, they did not work with third-party watch band makers to have an option out there when this is released. They have their own watch bands, and they've got a variety of around 20 different bands in different styles and colors and whatnot, around that, somewhere in there. So, I mean, there's a variety of them, but you're spending way more money from them. Like, it's similar to Apple prices when it comes to watch bands. Their regular silicone watch band is $50. So, I mean, that's a lot of money. Yeah, I don't buy first party watch bands for my Apple Watch. Not gonna do it. They're too freaking expensive. When I can buy watch bands off Amazon for get a 5-pack for $10. That's very similar. I mean, obviously they're not gonna be quite as good a quality, but I got 5 of them, and I spent a fifth of the price. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But like I said, Google didn't work with any third-party bands to have at launch. So if you're wanting different watch bands other than the one that you get when it comes to you, you're going to be waiting a minute unless you want to spend a lot of money. So that kind of sucks. One thing that they focused a lot on with this watch is it's got Fitbit built right into the watch, which makes sense because Google owns Fitbit now. That was always the rumor with these watches, that it was going to be a Wear OS watch, but have a little more fitness focusing on it because it has Fitbit and stuff. That's kind of cool. Some of the features that they showed on this looked really nice, like with the fitness stuff. I had this pulled up, but now I don't. That's lovely. Some of the health sensors that they have on this watch, they got an optical heart rate sensor, multi-purpose electrical sensor, not entirely sure what that's for, blood oxygen sensor, an accelerometer, gyroscope, altimeter, compass, whatnot. I did see in the thing that they showed that you could do an ECG similar to how it works in the Apple Watch. So they've got all the sensors that you could want on a smartwatch for the most part, especially at least in this price point, which the price on this is $350 for the Wi-Fi only, and then $400 for the LTE model. So, I mean, to me, that seems a little expensive for a first-generation watch, but we'll see. Battery on this thing, they're saying up to 24 hours, which, in my opinion, is not great. but we'll see. Especially like they were showing off a lot with the Fitbit stuff again, and like using it for sleep tracking and stuff like that. Like I know I don't wear a watch to sleep because I can't stand having that big of a device on my wrist while I'm trying to sleep. That's me, but I understand why people try to do that, but it is what it is. I don't think 24-hour battery life is going to be, like they're saying up to 24 hours. So realistically, what is that going to be? We don't know yet. And is that with everything turned off, like you're not tracking anything? Don't know yet. We're going to have, Wes, you're going to have to let us know because
I will.
Yeah.
I'm interested in it, going from a regular just Fitbit to this. We'll see how that goes.
You're definitely going to be charging a lot more than you do right now. That's for sure. But,
yeah. I mean, I usually, I will be. I mean, obviously 24 hours. So definitely. But
yeah.
Let's see.
They also did mention that they are bringing fall detection to this watch in 2023 is what they said. So it's not there yet. They're still working on that, I guess, software-wise, but that should be coming. And then also they mentioned that anybody that buys this watch will get 6 months of Fitbit Premium for free. So that's kind of handy. And then also, if you haven't had YouTube Premium in the past, you can get 3 months of that for free with the purchase of the watch. So that's kind of cool. Overall, I am more impressed with the Pixel Watch than I thought I was going to be. Like I said, it does look better, or the look of it is growing on me. Feature-wise, it does look like it'll be fairly nice and decent when it comes to, like, I mean, Wear OS looks a lot better than it has in the past. And then the Fitbit integration is going to be really nice. So they got the fitness stuff right there, which is going to be good. I mean, Wear OS had Google Fit stuff built in, and it was okay, but it's not as fully featured as what Fitbit is or what Apple Health is or, Samsung Health even. So having Fitbit built in, I think, is going to be a major selling factor to a lot of people. I mean, that's kind of why you bought it, Wes, right? It's because it's got Fitbit built in. It's basically a Fitbit watch. But, I mean, the Fitbit smartwatches that they've had have been decent, but they're not a smartwatch as much as like a Wear OS watch is. So this is like a Fitbit, but with full smartwatch features, whereas what were the Fitbit watch, like what were the options they had?
They got plenty. They got so if you're looking for the actual just watch, the Fitbit watch, is that what you're asking?
Like the higher end smartwatches that they have.
So they've got like the Sense 2, the Versa 4.
Yeah, those ones.
I can't remember the other ones.
Those ones are more focused on the Fitbit side of things, and then they have a few smartwatch features, but it's not as robust as what this is going to be in that side of things. So they have this priced competitively when it comes to that. So you've got anything like your basic Fitbit that's like maybe a heart rate tracker, and steps counter, all the way up to this Pixel watch now that does everything on the fitness, a lot of things on the fitness side and everything on the smartwatch side. They've got a lot of watches there now for you to choose from, which is nice. But yeah, we'll have to see. I'm definitely gonna keep an eye on the reviews on this, and Wes, you're gonna have to let us know what you think about this. I think it's a pretty decent watch. The price still seems a little bit high to me just because of a first generation watch. They're trying to compete price wise with Apple. It's a little cheaper than the Apple Watch, but only by $50. So it's not like a massive difference there. But I do like what I see so far. So we'll see. All right. The last thing that they talked about at this event was the Pixel tablet. And they didn't mention a lot about this. They mentioned ever so slightly more than they did before. Before they just said, "Oh, we're making a tablet and it's coming in 2023." That's all we knew. Now we at least know it's going to have the Tensor G2 chip as well. It has the ability to pair with a charging speaker / dock, which basically turns it into a home hub, which is kind of cool. So it's got a bigger display. It's like the Home Hub Max has the bigger display. So this kind of is in that same ballpark. But the benefit is you can take the tablet off and, use it as a tablet if you want. And it actually looked like they were taking the tablet interface pretty seriously finally. I mean, Google has kind of done it a little bit here in the past, but not much. And they said they definitely focused on saying, we've been working with third-party app developers to make their apps work better in tablet mode. And so hopefully they've actually done that. And some of these apps will, will look good on an Android tablet. That's always been the problem, is app developers just haven't put any focus on developing for Android tablets, because there's basically there's the Samsung tablets. And I mean, they're pretty good, but that's the only option you have the only decent option you have when it comes to Android tablets. It's either that or an iPad, and iPads are far and away much better, in my opinion. But this is interesting to me. They did not give a price. They did not give, they didn't say if this dock, the speaker dock thing, comes with it or not. If it does, depending on the price, I think that's a great deal. But if it doesn't, again, depending on the price, I mean, I really hope they come together, because that was kind of their whole thing, is using this tablet for smart home stuff and, things like that. And having it being able to pair with this charging dock and speaker, I mean, that again, they put a lot of focus on that. So I'm really hoping that they come bundled, because that would be the way to do it, in my opinion. But we'll find out. They said it's still coming in 2023 sometime. We don't know exactly when. I think when they first talked about it, they said early 2023. So that could be anywhere between January and March, probably. So we'll have to wait and see. But that was the Made by Google event in 2022. New phones, new watch, new tablet-ish. But that was not all that was announced this past week. Before this event, they announced a new Nest doorbell.
Oh, yes.
And this one is actually a wired doorbell. So the current version that you could have got before this was a battery-powered one that I can't remember exactly how many. I want to say it was, the reviews I saw were getting around 3 weeks of battery on a single charge, and then you'd have to take it off, charge it for a little while, and then put it back, So not great, but I guess if you're in a place where you either don't have doorbell wired to your house or apartment, or you just can't take off what is there, a wireless option is a good thing to have. But the wired one has its obvious benefits. This one is a little bit smaller than the wireless one because it doesn't need the battery on it. And it also will do 24-hour recording, whereas the battery-powered one does not do that. And this will also, if the power goes out, it does have a battery in it and will keep 1 hour of recording on device. And then once it gets back up to the cloud, like when it can connect to the cloud again, then it'll start setting that back up there. But on device, it will keep 1 hour's worth of recording. So that's kind of cool. It comes in 4 different colors. You can get it in snow, linen, ivy, or ash. Also known as white, tan, greenish, gray, and gray. So there you go. If you're looking at a new Nest doorbell, and you have the ability to wire it in, I would say that they're the same price. They're both $180. So depending on your situation, you have both good options. I'm actually somewhat interested. I mean, I have a Wise doorbell, but I really like this Nest doorbell a lot. Not going to lie. I don't need it.
It's cool.
But I want it.
Want it.
I want it. Mostly because, my doorbell doesn't do the 24-hour recording. I do pay $2 a month for the Wise subscription to... It'll record anytime if someone comes to the door or notice something, it'll record, but it's not a continuous recording. I don't know if it has that option or not. Maybe if I pay more, it'll do that. I don't know, but I don't necessarily want to do that. So I don't have this. The thing with the Wise cameras, a lot of their cameras have an SD card slot, and you can get 24-hour recording to the SD card. The Doorbell does not have that option, unfortunately. So I do have to pay to get that. But it was like $50, so I can't complain too much. But so they announced that. They also announced a new Nest Wi-Fi Pro. Now, this does not work with the previous Nest Wi-Fi mesh system that they had. So if you have one or two of those, you can't just buy one of these and have it just work. So that's kind of a downer, but it is what it is. This one is definitely better. So the price on this is $200, and then you can get a 2-pack for $300 or a 3-pack for $400. It does still have that mesh system built in if you want to have it. The biggest benefit to this one is it's got Wi-Fi 6E. I believe the regular Nest has Wi-Fi 6, but this has Wi-Fi 6E, and it is a 3-band router, which is going to be more beneficial for those that have a lot of smart home products. So those can communicate, and also with the mesh network, these can communicate a little better on a different band and not take away from the other 2 bands that you may have other stuff connected on. So that's kind of nice. These also come in 4 different colors with snow, again, linen, which is a different color than the Doorbell, even though it's the same name, fog, and lemongrass, also known as white. The linen is more of like it's a tan, but it's weird. And then fog is not what you would expect with it to be gray. It's more of like a greenish color. Interesting again. And then lemongrass is yellow. I actually like the look of the previous generation Nest Wi-Fi's better than this one. These ones also don't have a like Google Assistant built in. So like the previous Nest Wi-Fi's were basically also Google Home devices. So these ones don't have that. Some people are going to like that. Some people may not like that. I would actually prefer it to not have the Google Home built in personally. But some people liked that. These ones do not have that. So that is all the stuff that they announced this past week. Like I said, if you're interested, all of this stuff is available to pre-order right now. The phone comes later this week. I think the watch comes... Does it start shipping this week or next week? I can't remember.
The watch?
Yeah.
Mine said near the end of October.
Well, yours did, but what about others? Maybe more people
order. You asked me what?
Yeah, it's true. I did ask you. Either way, everything is up for pre-order now. So if you are interested, go check it out. There are some deals at different places. I mean, you can get stuff from the Google Store. They do have some deals going on. Like Wes mentioned, you can get $200 in Google Store credit for your next purchase with a Pixel 7 purchase. Or if you, depending on what you're trading in, you can get up to $750 off a Pixel 7 phone. Again, depending on what you're trading in. But yeah. It did show
$400 for a Pixel 5. So,
are you going to do that, or are you going to keep your phone?
I'm going to keep my phone.
Yeah. You guys both tend to keep your old devices. I don't.
I just like the backup, and might be a good messing with phone, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. That one you could put the beta on, right?
Exactly.
Which you still probably won't do.
I might tinker. I might turn it into a phone or something. I don't know what I'll do. Let's be real. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. But that is all of the news that I have for this week. All the Google stuff.
It's good stuff. Very good stuff. It's making me have, a lot less money. On that,
yes,
so.
I know that feeling. I know I'm
a lot less money.
I'm kind of hoping / not looking forward to spending money later this month, depending on what Apple does.
Right. Oh, yeah. Man. No, I'm excited. To go back to the band that they use is actually the same band that I've got for this Fitbit, and it's actually quite nice. It's just a quick on-off thing. It's really nice. For the Fitbit I have the Charge 5, Fitbit, and so that was nice. It looks like overall it should be pretty good for my use case on the Pixel Watch. I don't know. You've just inspired me for getting a Wear OS type thing, so I figured, let's try it. If I like it, cool. If not, then I'll blame Landon.
Okay, blame me. That's fine. I mean, I've heard a lot of people complain about different things when it comes to Wear OS. I never had issues with it. It always worked fine for me. For what I wanted in a smartwatch, it was always good enough.
Yeah.
I went with the Apple Watch partially because I switched to an iPhone, partially because I'm trying to work out a little more, and the Wear OS watches at the time weren't nearly as robust when it came to that type of stuff. Now, I think this Pixel Watch is going to compete with that, and some of the newer Samsung watches will also compete with that. But for me, the Apple Watch was the better price. I think if I were still on Android, I would consider the Pixel Watch a little more. I don't love the look of it. It's not my favorite. I do prefer a round watch. I will say that. This one's just not quite my style. But again, it has grown on me. It does look a little better. And when I saw it more at this event, like more people, like in videos with people using it and on wrists and stuff like that, it did look better than what the renders are. But I think it'll be a decent watch.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited to try it. I mean, I've been really trying to dive into the tech thing, because before, like, I would just so old school with cards and things, and so I'm really trying to use like the Google Pay and the things like that, really get into it. And so I was like, this might be one that. Plus, as we mentioned before, another reason why I'm doing it is because my company will pay up to $300 for smartwatches that have like, or Fitbits or things that have like Fitbit stuff on it. So I was like, well, I guess this is better than never. I mean, let's give it a try. Why not?
Yeah.
If I don't like it, then I can always just go back to my Fitbit, So anyway, yeah, I'm excited to get a new phone. I waited this past generation. I skipped the generation for the 6 to go to the 7 and just kind of go with that. So it'll be good. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of money just to get this, so it better be good.
It better be good, yes.
Better be good. Anyway, so Caleb, hey, we'll move on from some Google news. I hear you might have a couple things that you want to talk about.
Oh, man. All right. So, listener, this past week has been real fun. So let's talk about some of the fun and exciting and interesting and strange and bizarre and annoying and frustrating and some stuff happened this past
quit
week.
Calling me names.
We're going to talk about It's all Wes. It's all Wes's fault. All of this is Wes. Just
Fair
remember.
enough.
So, the iPhone 14 has a new feature. It's called crash detection, right? It's supposed to detect when you've been in a crash and notify the police. So apparently there are at least 6 recorded cases of an iPhone 14 that has called the police to inform them that the owner has been involved in a serious car accident after they rode a roller coaster.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So that's fun.
I did see headlines saying that accidental car crash detection, but I didn't actually read that it was a roller coaster. I figured maybe
roller coaster,
a minor fender bender, or just stopping to. No, that's funny.
Nope. It's the kind of thing where the gyroscope actually needs to feel like crap is going down, like it's flipping upside down. It's getting jerked from side to side. It's, so a minor fender bender, that's not going to do it. You've got to like do a loop-de-loop or something like that. So good times. So, and that's at least 6 cases from a police department that is local to a specific theme park. So theme parks across the country could be causing these issues, and we just don't have the data from those PDs. So that's fun.
That's fantastic.
Now, we talked about AMD's processor releases. We talked about how they were pretty impressive chips that were, at least at the lower end, being held back by the fact that the platform entry cost for the AM5 socket and AMD's new platform was prohibitively expensive if you wanted to buy their 6-core, 12-thread, 7600 processor. That's going to all stop being an issue tomorrow, as of recording, so October 10th, when the AM5 B650 and B650E motherboards are set to launch. Now, these motherboards, instead of starting at $500, are going to start somewhere in the sub $200 range. Right now, the cheapest one that I have seen is $189, so that's still not as cheap as AMD has promised. They have said that they're expecting some B650 motherboards to kind of start in the $140 range, which $140 for your motherboard, $300 for your CPU, that's a good ratio. So if you are interested in these 7000 series chips from AMD, but you don't want to buy a 7950X, then here you go. This is probably, you want to start shopping in these B650 motherboards. Okay, now things get weird. This past week, it was confirmed, and I mean solidly confirmed this time, that Elon Musk lives and tweets directly to us from a fantasy world outside space and time. So a few weeks back, Elon Musk took to Twitter, and as per frickin' usual, interesting things happen whenever Elon Musk takes to Twitter. He suggested that the Cybertruck will be, quote, waterproof enough to serve briefly as a boat, so it can cross rivers, lakes, and even seas that aren't too choppy, close quote. So that was a couple of weeks ago, and everybody since then has piled on to point out the many, 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 many issues that abound with that particular statement, including the fact that plenty of non-boat vehicles are watertight enough to float, at least briefly. And in response to this, the Washington State Department of Natural Resources tweeted, "Our derelict vehicle crews are begging you to understand that anything that served briefly as a boat should not be used as a boat." Because briefly isn't gonna... I mean, that just means you end up at the bottom of the lake or the river or the... He said seas, so long as it's not too choppy. Like, Elon. What? So, like I said, basically confirmed he does not live on our plane of existence. This past week, it got even better. Somebody from the frankly strange to me ranks of the Tesla fanboys tweeted some kind of speculatory tweet about, like, well, how fast would it be able to go? And, quote, tweeted at Elon Musk. And he replied to this tweet, quote, "You'd need an electric propeller mounted on the tow hitch to go faster than a few knots. There might be a creative wheel hub design that can generate meaningful thrust." So he's proposing that they have come up with some sort of a wheel hub design for their vehicles that will allow it to function like a paddle boat, which is impossible. I don't know if you've ever looked at a paddle boat wheel, listener, like if you've been to Disneyland or something like that, and you look at the back of one of those things, you might note that there's no tire there, and that the fluid dynamics involved in this, having a tire on it, is going to cause problems. Now, I feel like it's worth noting that there are vehicles that can go from land to at least mostly water, and then back to land, and they're okay. You can do that with a snowmobile, as long as you're going fast enough, but you really need to be cruising. And then there's another vehicle, I can't remember what, I think it's called the Sherpa or something like that is a Russian-built vehicle from like a couple decades ago or something like that is essentially an entirely enclosed hub that has skid steer steering on tires that are 8 feet in diameter and mostly air. And this thing is absolutely capable of driving on water at seas, as long as it's not too choppy. And the reason for that being, it has sealed bags of air to keep it afloat.
Yeah.
Your Tesla is not going to be able to do that. And I don't care how novel your wheel hub design is, if it doesn't literally have paddles sticking off the side of it, like 6 to 12 inches, it's not going to generate meaningful thrust. Elon, you're a psychopath, especially considering that just if the Tesla is actually watertight enough to float. That means that the body of the car is watertight enough to float, which means that most of the lower part of the car would have to be submerged in order to displace the water to make it float. This is how buoyancy works. It's basic physics, like middle school level physics, right? This is the Archimedes jumps out of the bathtub, screams Eureka, and runs down the street naked thing. That's what we're talking about here. This is not complicated stuff. Elon Musk should understand this. And given that situation, the vehicle's wheels would be submerged. So even if they were literally paddles, then, the bottom part would be pushing the water backwards, the top part would be pushing the water forwards, and the vehicle would go nowhere. So, So all of this taken into account, I think it's fair to say, Elon, that no, this thing isn't tight enough to serve as a boat, and no, there is no novel wheel hub design that will generate meaningful thrust, because the Cybertruck, much like the Tesla Semi, is basically vehicular vaporware at this point. The vehicle doesn't exist. So, cool.
Two things. One, I could have swore they canceled the Cybertruck. I could be wrong. But I thought I remember hearing that at one point in time. Two, I know where this came from. Elon was, just browsing different movies he wanted to watch the other day. He came across a great movie from, when was this made? Like the 60s or 70s? It's an older movie. You may have heard of it. If not, it's a great one. You need to go watch it. It's called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And Elon he was watching this, and he's like, it was his eureka moment. He jumped out of the bathtub, ran down the street naked, and just tweeted out, I'm going to make this into the Cybertruck. It's going to be great. Because that car, it can go from driving on the land and then go into the water just fine. It also flies, so he didn't get that far into the movie yet, apparently, because he saw it go into water and thought, this is amazing, and then he ran out. When he gets to the next part of the movie, when it starts to fly, he's going to tweet, oh, by the way, the Cybertruck will also be able to fly.
Yep.
So when that happens, you know where he's at in the movie. Just keep an eye on that, and when he also mentions that maybe we'll be able to, for people that want to, they'll be able to get out of being captured by some crazy guy in a clown costume, because that also happens in the movie.
I mean, the vehicles are supposedly self-driving as well. So yeah, that's a fair point. That's as good an explanation as I can come up with for all of the stuff that Elon Musk tweets, is that he is just grossly misunderstanding that no, Elon, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang isn't a documentary. That technology does not exist. He's watching. It's all like, they could do this back in the 50s. Like, why can't I do it now? Surely. Yeah. And then he goes into Tesla and screams at the engineers for not being smart enough.
Yep.
Good times. Good times. All right. So moving on from the strange to the bizarre. A tech sculptor, which is apparently a thing that exists. Essentially, the dude is an artist. He's a sculptor, except he incorporates computer designs and computer controlled motion and stuff like that into his sculptures, and evidently is also a programmer. So that matters, I guess. David Bowen. This past week, he unveiled a project he'd been working on that has built a robotic machete arm that is controlled by a houseplant. So it uses electrodes to read the electrical resistance variations in the plant's leaves, and then uses software to interpret that noise into motion for a robotic arm that is holding a machete.
This is a whole new take on a Venus flytrap.
It's actually looks pretty cool. It's really neat to watch this thing. Just this plant, and the arm just occasionally just moves and does these really graceful motions and stuff like that. So Google robot machete plant if you want to see the video, listener. It's genuinely pretty interesting.
That's cool.
So that's my tech news. I do have some gaming stuff that I can get into if now is the time.
Yeah, go ahead. Good. Let's get into some gaming news.
All right. I have one piece of useful gaming news for you, listener. Intel's Arc GPUs. They are about to launch. And just this past week, the review embargo for them was lifted. So we got a whole bunch of testing videos and reactions and impressions of the Arc A770 and A750. So, aesthetically, the cards are understated but pleasing, and evidently, according to Gamers Nexus, a nightmare to disassemble. Apparently pretty similar to the RTX 20 series from Nvidia, which famously could not be disassembled non-destructively. There was a nice shiny decorative plate on the cooler that you literally had to bend and tear away from the glue that was holding it down in order to get to any screws at all, just any of them. So cool. That's what it's like to disassemble. However, performance, it does land around that of the RTX 3060, a little bit below the Radeon 6600 XT. So kind of where they had said it would land. And in terms of price, the thing is price competitive with those graphics cards. So seems, pretty hunky-dory right there for the A770. I think the A750 in terms of performance is actually probably more compelling because the performance is not that far below the A770, and the price, it's below $300. So it's a pretty good position to be sitting for Intel there. They're seeing better ray tracing performance than most people were expecting out of these cards, so you can kind of tell where Intel put the majority of their effort. There is a significant loss of performance in older titles, especially essentially anything that is not DirectX 12 or Vulkan based. Now, consider that lower performance in an older game. So if you're getting 80% of the performance on this GPU than you would be on a similar Nvidia or AMD card, 80% of 200 FPS is still like 160 FPS. So it's not like the thing sucks at old games, like you're getting 30 FPS or something like that. It just doesn't natively support the APIs and is using a Windows translation layer in order to actually play them. So your frame rates are going to take a pretty massive hit. So if you're just playing older games, maybe this isn't the time to be buying into the Intel GPU. But consider, it's not that bad. And also, it's a GPU that was not made by Nvidia or AMD. And quite frankly, it would be nice if we had a third competitor in this space. So maybe we should encourage them, by buying their cards. So yeah, I think the biggest downside that we're seeing out of the reviews for the Arc GPUs is that they are essentially restricted to newer processor platforms that are compatible with the resizable bar. I can't remember what AMD calls it, but their direct access GPU dealio that essentially allows the platform, when rendering stuff out to the GPU, to bypass the CPU and go straight from storage to the GPU. If you don't have that, basically, even according to Intel, due to the architecture issues on these GPUs that we have talked about, we've mentioned in the past and previous podcasts, like a month ago, listener, that were the reason that we thought that this wasn't even going to launch at all, and is part of the big reason why it took them so long. If you don't have resizable bar, the architecture is fundamentally broken, and you basically can't. You don't want these cards. You'll be getting like 20 FPS regardless of what you do. So just something to bear in mind. If you are rocking an older CPU and you don't want to upgrade to a new CPU, you're not shopping for Intel GPUs. There you go. But in general, most reviews were cautiously optimistic that Intel's going to be able to sort out the driver issues that we're seeing occasionally pop up at this point. And everybody really wants Intel to succeed in this space. The competition that we have seen in the processor space between AMD and Intel, and also companies like Microsoft and Apple exploring moves to ARM processors, has done a lot to make computer processors actually very competitive. That's a very competitive market right now. And you can tell by Nvidia's pricing of the 40 series GPUs that they announced, they don't feel like anyone's competing with them. Like AMD is there. They kind of compete in the mid-range, but that's just not, there's not enough competition in the GPU space. So we would all like to see Intel succeed with this. That being said, I'm probably not going to be buying an Arc GPU myself. I have in the past expressed that my main desire is actually to buy a used GPU. So obviously Arc is kind of out of the equation due to that. But that actually does lead me quite nicely into my next piece of gaming news. We're done with the useful information, listener, so if you just want to tone out after this. Nvidia RTX 4090. So literally the same day as the review embargo for the Arc GPUs lifted, Nvidia lifted their quote-unquote unboxing embargo for the 4090. Yeah, you weren't allowed to show anybody the thing out of its box before that day. And they did it at the same time because they just wanted to steal Intel's thunder, which is another reason I'm not going to be buying an Nvidia GPU this year.
I mean, it's only the same size as an Xbox Series S.
Freaking
Did you
heck,
see that?
though.
Did you see that?
They are all enormous and impractical. They're power hungry.
Oh.
They're overpriced. Nobody should buy a 4090. And I say that knowing that people are still going to buy a 4090. But my sincere hope is that Nvidia has foisted themselves on their own petard over this, and that they are going to absolutely bleed money of stock of 4090s just sitting unpurchased. The idiots that have too much money for their own good are going to buy them, but hopefully nobody else will.
Yeah.
Please, just don't. Like, oh, it's so bad. But yeah, those are also launching on October 12th. I guess, did I say that? The Intel GPUs launched on October 12th. The 4090 is also launching on October 12th. These two GPUs do not actually compete with each other in any meaningful way at all. If you're in the market for a 4090, you haven't even heard of the Intel GPUs, let's be honest. And if you're in the market for the Intel GPUs, you're way too smart to buy a 4090. So even if you had the money. But yeah, that's my GPU news. I have one other piece of gaming news, but I'm going to hold on to that one till the end.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, let's move on. Let's go ahead and let's get this out of the way, because I feel like this is actually good news on this. The acquisition of Activision Blizzard. I almost put those together and said Blizzard.
Blizzard.
Or Activision, whichever you want to say. Anyway, so the Brazilian government, they okayed it. They approved, and with no concessions. They're just like, yep, this is what it is.
Okay.
And cool. So that's one step forward. And I think, I'm going to be honest, I don't know who else. I think was the US and the UK, and then
I don't know that I've heard anything from the US. Has the EU signed off on it yet? I can't remember.
Let's see. Nope, it says here the EU and the US.
Oh, okay.
Awaiting. So, but yeah, so cool. If you want to go read a lot of the statements from there, cool. They did actually give quite a bit of information that normally Xbox wouldn't or Microsoft wouldn't announce, but how much actual numbers of Game Pass is making them. So there's like $2.something billion for the year. So that's Game Pass, but they never release those numbers, so. But if you're interested in that, you can go take a look at that for numbers for, if you want to take a look. Yeah, cool. Good news. One step forward for Blizzard titles and Activision titles to be resurrected, I guess. Okay, let's move on. I figured I'd throw this out there. If you're actually looking to do a Valve Steam Deck, they are now available without reservation.
Yes, finally.
Yeah. Have at it. I mean, these things are very popular. I'm not going to get one.
I'm not going to get one yet, but I got to tell you, when I was sitting down to be like, okay, so am I buying a new graphics card this year, or am I buying a new gaming handheld that costs the same price? It was very close. I was like, GPU or Steam Deck, GPU or Steam Deck. Ooh, it's a tough decision.
Yeah. No, I think I don't know. I just don't. I mean, I have a Switch myself, but I have it docked all the time. So
yeah, well, I mean, I would probably play the Steam Deck docked a lot of the time too. It's just it can fully replace a laptop, and it can be your gaming PC. You can take it on the go anywhere you want, or you can just play with it right there. And it's a PC. Like it'll fetch and run all my games.
Yeah, that's true. Well, not only that, like all your games, but even streaming, if you're into the streaming, the cloud stuff. Like,
yeah. I mean, I'm not, but yeah, why not?
Yeah. So
I'd get into it. Sure. Why not?
So there you go. If you want to take a look at that, sweet. One thing I find this interesting just because it is kind of a rumor, but I guess there's a lot of people reporting on this. So because of the big shakeup of 343 Industries of Halo, they actually are now starting to suggest that they are moving engines. So Halo was built on its own in-house slip space engine. But what they're saying is they're actually going to be moving Halo over to Unreal Engine. A lot of people were thinking, well, what was interesting is a lot of people were saying this, but so in a nutshell, it's been reported that there's another, not 343 Industries, but 343 contracted out to another company that is working on a Halo thing that's coming soon, but everyone knows I guess it's going to be their Halo, not free for all. What do you call it? Battleground?
The Battle Royale.
Yeah, Battle Royale. So, but a lot of people are saying that that's possibly their first step to being an Unreal Engine. So it's just interesting to me, just because, I don't know, porting a game to Unreal is from another engine, just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Unreal is a very well supported and very deep engine in terms of like the feature set and stuff like that. So it's like you can do pretty much anything in Unreal. I'm sure that there are people who hear this and think to themselves, but like, what about the signature feel of Halo's multiplayer? Like that matters, and the engine is a part of that. But you could pretty much guarantee you could recreate that in Unreal Engine if you had a big development team, which obviously they do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll bet they can. And on the plus side, or on the flip side, you get all of these things that Unreal brings you, like the ability to basically just make one version of every model that is just super high res, and then the engine itself will auto scale that thing to fit any different like tier of hardware that you run it on, when you're looking at it from really far away, when you scale the thing down in terms of like turning the graphics settings down or whatever. The engine takes care of resetting that model, rescaling that model so that it's compatible with all that stuff. And it'll do the same thing with ray tracing and stuff like that. So like Unreal has a lot of features I can see them wanting to just, it would simplify their life. And obviously the main downside is, we got to port the game, and also we have to pay Epic a whole bunch of money. Which,
but I mean, they're in good standing with Epic right now. I mean, Microsoft went to bat for them over that Apple thing, but also, I mean, Gears 5, literally one of the most beautiful games. Like, and so the Coalition, a lot of other games in Microsoft's portfolio uses Unreal, and so I think this also can make it to where if they had to add work to 343, they have other people that are familiar with the engine, so they could help. And so I think it's cool, but I'm not that savvy on programming, so I'm just like, that sounds like a Herculean task, but I don't know.
I mean, if you've got a development team that all they're doing is just banging away on it, that's more than like 10. If it's a small development team, then I'm sure that that would be quite an ask, taking your game that's already essentially finished and porting it into a new engine. But you know what? They got the money, they got the manpower. Just so long as they're not making anybody work a whole bunch of overtime, I don't care. They can do it. It's fine.
True. Okay, let's move on. We're actually going to talk a little bit about Windows 11 gaming. I thought this was interesting, and I just wanted to bring it up to a listener that, because obviously we don't have Windows 11, but you listener may. And if you're noticing that your game's performance is kind of lacking on Windows 11, well, Microsoft says that, hey, if you turn off some security features, it may help your improve performance.
Oh, good.
Oh, good. Yep. This is literally what it said. It said the company explained that the gamers may want to disable memory integrity and the virtual machine platform to improve performance in games.
Good. Yes.
And Windows 11 is just winning on all levels.
Seems fine.
This sounds fine. Totally. So listener, you can do this if you need to. You can disable the memory integrity. It's also called the hypervisor protected code integrity. That's another. So the HVCI, you can, And I just figured I'd let that know, just because that's the weirdest thing I've said Microsoft says Windows 11 security features can impact gaming performance.
Good job, Microsoft.
But I mean, so there you go. That's the last thing I wanted to talk about and mention on there, just because if you want better performance, there you go. Anywho, and I think we're going to swing back over to Caleb because he wanted to save this for last. So Caleb, what you got for us?
All right, listener. It's time once again for our favorite segment on this show, where we talk about how Doom modders are just the best people on the internet. Now, this one's fresh. Like, normally when I'm talking about these mods, they've rolled out into the news flow of the general happenings of a week. But this one was literally, I did not see this. And right before we recorded, Wes, coming fresh off the back of a tweet from John Romero, sends a YouTube video that displays somebody who has got Doom running in Notepad. So yes, that's right, Windows Notepad. Now, to be absolutely clear from what it sounds like in the description on the video, he's not actually executing code in Notepad, because that's not how Notepad works. It's just a plain text editor. I'm not sure if you knew this, listener. It is one of the most basic pieces of software in Windows, and it has been shipping with Windows since like 1990. So anyways.
Yeah.
Notepad is the display. So the game is running in Windows, and it is outputting to Notepad. So kind of like, the Lego brick or the pregnancy test or all of these other things that we have played Doom on over the years. You can now play it on a black and white image displayed in Notepad via ASCII text. What's baffling to me is that supposedly this is a completely unedited version of Notepad. So they just opened up Notepad and they're doing something that is dumping this content into Notepad. And I'm not sure how TF this is happening. It's one of those looks like black magic to me things, but it appears to be hitting a frame rate of above 20 FPS. And as far as I can tell, they're taking the display output of the game, converting it into ASCII text, and then copy and pasting that into Notepad in giant blocks. And they're doing that 20 times a second or something like that, 15 to 20 times a second. Fast enough that it appears to be playing at close to the native frame rate of Doom.
So awesome.
I don't know, listener, like a while ago, there was a game that somebody made that was baked into an open text font file, an OTF font, computer font. And this feels about the same as that to me. Most of the rest of these Doom mods, like, I understand. I don't have the creativity or the acumen to come up with them and actually put them together, but I understand how they work. You know, the pregnancy test one, it's just a tiny black and white monochrome display on a pregnancy test that a dude hacked the input for and managed to scale Doom down until it could run on that ridiculously tiny display. Same thing with the embedded OLED screen inside of an angled Lego brick. Like, I understand how these things work. You know, I understand how you can take like 1,000 potatoes and use the minuscule electric current that you get by bridging two different types of metal across those and scale that up to literally a house full of potatoes and get enough current to power a graphing calculator to run Doom on. I understand how that works. But some of these things like this one, I look at this and I'm like, how are you doing that? How does this exist? What magic is occurring before mine eyes? And I got nothing. So yeah, this is pretty cool. But Doom in Notepad, that's a thing.
It's a thing. Yep.
So there you go. Doom modders, still the best.
Oh, so magical. I'm so glad I found that.
Yeah,
I was
seriously.
just on Twitter, just going through for a minute, seeing if any announcements, and there was John Romero. Thanks, Romero. All right, anywho, I think that's everything, unless Landon, do you have one more thing for us?
Nope, I don't.
Not at all.
That's when Apple does events, not when Google does events.
True, you did do that, didn't you? Anyway, well, looks like we're at the end of the episode. Dear listener, thank you so much for putting up with us through the whole episode, really, and our rants and, our nonsense. It's just so fun. We appreciate it. If you want to check out anything else, say like on YouTube, you can check out our videos there at Calling All Platforms. If you want to get a hold of us, you can get a hold of us at callingallplatforms.com or our social media websites. And we do have a Patreon if you want to support us that way. And we'll have to be, I believe we've been updating things on there. I haven't looked for our Patreon on there. So if you want to subscribe to that,
it is up to date. And if you would in fact like to force somebody to use an old Microsoft phone, I believe it was me that was signed up for that. And I believe that it's, I can't remember the tier. You'll have to go to patreon.com/callingallplatforms and look.
You imagine the aneurysm he'd have every time we record, just like, why?
It'd be real bad. I mean, it was only for like a week, but I'm still not sure I could do that.
For safety reasons, we'd have to make it your second driver.
Yeah. I would not be putting my SIM card into it. Let's just put it that
way. Awesome. All right, dear listener, have a good week.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Calling All Platforms is a production of Supporter Sound Studios. To learn more about how you can support the podcast, go to www.patreon.com/callingallplatforms.